Alright, so for my project, I chose to take a look at baseball, and in a project entitled Beyond the Stats, I wanted to look a little deeper at the game of baseball and examine it from a perspective that I previously had not. So, this might not be a big surprise, but I've always been a big sports fan, and I've always loved examining the history and happenings of baseball. Over the past several years, I spent a great deal of time looking over baseball history, but there was one aspect I was completely unfamiliar with and hadn't at all explored. Also, this might be a topic that isn't all that interesting to all of you. Some of you might find it a little boring, so I'm sorry if it loses your interest. I'll do my best to keep it interesting. So to measure a player's greatness, I've always relied on traditional stats: home runs, RBIs, hits, and all the rest. That's Babe Ruth pictured on the right there. He's pretty much accepted as one of the best players of all time. I hope you've all heard of him. And the way to do that, to look a little deeper, is using a system called sabermetrics, which looks at, it's more of a performance-based system. What is sabermetrics? Well, it was invented by the gentleman on the right there holding the 4 baseballs. His name's Bill James. He's a baseball fan, mathematician, and historian. And the system he created objectively measures the impact of an individual through in-game activity. Some of you may have seen or heard of the movie Moneyball that was out about a year and a half ago. That movie's all about the Oakland A's using sabermetrics. The picture there on the left is of Billy Beane, the A's general manager, a famous endorser of sabermetrics. He used the system to build a team using little-known stats. Some common examples of sabermetrics that Beane himself used are base runs, win shares, secondary average, things like that measure statistics that aren't so obvious, more performance-based, which I thought was really interesting. I hope you do too, so sorry if this is kind of losing you. The most important stat, however, that Bill James identified in measuring a hitter's impact is runs created, because it's the hitter's job to contribute runs to his team. So the formula for that is hits plus walks times total bases divided by at-bats plus walks. So being that it is a hitter's job to create runs and be involved in them, that's why Bill James identifies this as the number one stat that you should look at when looking for a player and evaluating one. Research. Well, because I was completely unfamiliar with sabermetrics, I started from the very beginning. Top left there's a book called An Introduction to the Science of Baseball Statistics, Understanding Sabermetrics, which was really helpful. And the research took a lot longer than I had anticipated. I didn't realize how complex sabermetrics is. Then the 2 Bill James books there in the top right and bottom left, those also helped a lot because it's from James himself. He identifies what's important, what's not, in his own system. So I thought that was really interesting. Academic component. Well, I've always wondered and kind of speculated who the best San Francisco Giants are of all time, and with this system, I could find that out. Not everyone might be interested in that. That might totally bore some of you. I hope it doesn't. It was really exciting to me when I decided to do this. Like, yeah, I can take the system and see the players who I have always thought were the best to see if the sabermetrics agreed with that. And all the pictures there are from different eras of Giants baseball, so now you could compare them using this system. Interview process. I talked to a whole bunch of lifelong and knowledgeable Giants fans to get their opinion. Dr. O'Grady, pictured on the right, he's one of the first people I went to. He was my mentor for this process because I know he knows a whole lot about Giants baseball and has followed it his whole life, and he'd be a good person to talk to see who he thinks are the best Giants that he's seen play. Common threads. Well, everybody I talked to said that Willie Mays, who's pictured top left, is the best center fielder of all time. That was really no surprise. Bill James makes the case that he's the best center fielder of all time, not just for the Giants. Top right there, Willie McCovey. He's a Hall of Fame first baseman. Everyone said he should be the best first baseman in Giants history. Then at the bottom there, y'all might recognize him. That's Barry Bonds. Everyone said he should be the left fielder. There were some disagreements, which was really great for me because it made it more fun. I could go back and see who was right based on the sabermetrics. Darrell Evans, his plaque is pictured on the left there, and on the right is Matt Williams. They both played third base. Some people thought Evans was better. Some people thought Williams was better. That made it really fun for me to see what the sabermetrics agreed with. Now on the bottom there, Robbie Thompson on the left, Jeff Kent on the right. Both second basemen, both really good, different eras. Who was better? Some thought Thompson, some thought Kent. Next here, shortstops. On the top, Chris Spire, and then on the right, Rich Aurelia. Some of you might remember Aurelia. Both played in very different eras. Spire was a shortstop in the 60s. Then at the bottom there, you all might recognize him, Buster Posey in the bottom left, and on the right, Dick Dietz. They were both catchers. Dietz caught for the Giants in the 60s. Now for the winners. I chose them by position, and I did that based on various sabermetric statistics. All right, first base, the winner was Willie McCovey. I mentioned that earlier. There was really no surprise here. He's a Hall of Famer. The number in the middle there, 417, is his career runs created, which I showed the formula for earlier. I measured a bunch of different stats, but I'll only, just for the sake of numbers, I only put one up there, 417. That's more than double. The next best first baseman I discovered was J.T. Snow, a name that might sound familiar. He had 203 career runs created as a Giant. So more than double, really easy choice to choose, Willie McCovey. Second base, I chose Jeff Kent. He won the 2000 MVP as a Giant, and his Giants career runs created was 170. The next man behind him was Robbie Thompson, who had 155. So kind of right behind him, but I determined, based on a couple other stats, that Jeff Kent was the best. At third base, Darrell Evans. He was a Giants third baseman in the 80s and was known for his strong at-bats, known there, 264 runs created as a Giant, which was more than Matt Williams, who was second. A lot of people I talked to who saw Matt Williams play thought he should be known as the best third baseman, but the sabermetrics thought different, so I gave it to Darrell Evans. Shortstop Chris Spire. That might not be a name that sounds familiar, but he was mostly known for his great defensive efforts as a Giant, but he could also hit 206 career wins. That's more than any other shortstop in Giants history. Another one that was considered was Omar Vizquel, who played for the Giants and was a fan favorite here for a lot of years, but he only played 4 seasons in San Francisco. Spire played 10 years, so he had more chances to rack up more runs created. Left field, mentioned earlier, again, no surprise, Barry Bonds. Obviously now we can go back and speculate, well, performance enhancers, did that have any effect? But just looking at the numbers by themselves, pretty undeniable. 467, that number in the middle there, the career runs created. Pretty darn good. He was fun to watch as a Giant, played from 93 to 2007, and no one else was really even close when it came to that category. Center field, Willie Mays. Again, no surprise, some historians say best of all time, so didn't really have to compare him with anyone else. When I went back and calculated his runs created, it was higher than even I thought it would be, 642. So that was pretty easy to select him. He must have been a whole lot of fun to watch, Willie Mays. And then in right field, Bobby Bonds. That's Barry Bonds' dad. Now, he's somewhat overshadowed today because of how good Barry was, but he was also a pretty phenomenal athlete. 362 career runs created as a Giant, also known for his strong defense. He was a pretty quick choice too. Mostly everyone I talked to said he was the best right fielder that they ever saw. And the last one, the catcher. Well, this one might be kind of a surprise. I chose Dick Dietz. He has 187 career runs created in a Giants uniform. The thing is, some people thought Posey should be on there. However, he's only played just a couple years, just the 2 years. Dick Dietz caught for 6 years as a Giant, so maybe a few seasons from now, Posey catches up to him, but for now, it's still Dick Dietz. So I really hope that wasn't too boring and kind of kept your attention, and maybe you recognize some of those names, as I had so much fun with this, and it was really interesting to me to find out who was better, who was not. So I hope you enjoyed that part. Then the other